The rain in Tacoma didn't fall so much as it waited above you, a low ceiling of steel that pressed the city into a hush. Ethan Cole had chosen that hush on purpose. A veteran learns to recognize the kinds of noise that never leave you. Rotor wash, sudden shouting, the sharp metallic click of a latch you didn't secure yourself. When he came back stateside for leave, Ethan didn't want beaches or bright lights, or people asking questions with soft voices. He wanted a place where he could blend into wet sidewalks and cheap coffee, where the world looked down at its own shoes. So he rented a small unit over a closed-down tattoo parlor near the edge of Hilltop, paid cash, used a name that was technically his, and technically not useful to anyone. Rex approved. The German Shepherd lay with his chin on his paws by the window each night, amber eyes tracking headlights sliding through rain like ghosts. When Ethan moved, Rex moved. When Ethan stopped, Rex stopped. A body that calm doesn't come from comfort. It comes from training, and the kind of loyalty that doesn't need words. On Ethan's third morning in Tacoma, the rain finally turned to mist, thin, cold threads that made everything smell like wet cedar and brake dust. Ethan took Rex out for a walk the way he always did when his thoughts started pacing inside his skull. Not to exercise, to scan. Tacoma was full of lines, tracks that split neighborhoods, highways that cut through communities like old scars, fences that weren't just metal, but decisions. Ethan followed one of those lines downhill, away from the new cafes with chalkboard menus and toward the older blocks where paint peeled from porches and the streetlights flickered like they were tired too. That's where he saw the van. It was parked half on the curb, hazard lights off, engine running, the kind of vehicle that could be delivery if you didn't look too hard, and the kind of vehicle you stop noticing if you've trained yourself not to ask questions. Rex noticed anyway. His ears snapped forward, his gait changed, still walking, still calm, but tighter, focused. His nose lifted and tested the air like he could taste the wrongness. Ethan followed Rex's gaze. Across the street sat a narrow brick building, wedged between a laundromat and a boarded-up bookstore. The old sign above it had faded letters, Harbor House Community Pantry. A woman stood at the front steps, one hand on the railing, the other pressed to her chest as if trying to hold her heart in place. She was elderly, late 70s, maybe older, but not fragile in the way people assumed. White hair braided tight down her back, heavy coat buttoned to the throat. A face lined by weather and time, but the eyes were sharp. Two men blocked the door. A third lingered by the van, smoking, pretending not to watch. Ethan didn't rush in. He didn't make a sound. He simply stopped at the edge of the crosswalk and let his brain do what it had done for years. 3 targets, 1 victim, 1 driver. No civilians close enough to complicate the first 5 seconds. The woman spoke, voice firm despite the trembling in her hand. "This pantry is not for sale," she said. The tallest thug, broad shoulders, shaved head, a silver chain that looked like it had been stolen from a better man, laughed like the sound belonged to someone else. "Lady, nobody said anything about sale," he replied. "We're just here to remind you, that's all." The second man stepped closer, crowding her against the railing. He smelled like sour sweat even from across the street. He lifted a hand, not quite a slap, not quite a grab, just enough to show her what he could do. The third by the van flicked ash, eyes constantly darting down the street. Ethan's fingers curled at his side. Rex didn't growl. He didn't bark. He just locked on. Ethan crossed the street at a normal pace, as if he belonged there, as if he was just another guy walking his dog in the mist. The men didn't look worried until they saw Rex. A German shepherd on a mission makes people's bodies remember things their minds pretend not to know. Ethan stopped 10 feet away and spoke once, quiet, controlled. "Step away from her." The shaved head thug turned, eyes scanning Ethan's plain jacket, his old boots, his posture. He smiled like he'd already decided Ethan was harmless. "Or what?" he asked. "You gonna call the cops, man? You new here?" The woman's eyes flicked to Ethan and then to Rex, and something in her expression tightened. Not fear, but recognition. Not of Ethan specifically, but of the kind of man who didn't bluff. Ethan didn't answer the thug's question. He watched the second man's right hand, the hand dipped toward a pocket. Ethan's voice stayed level. "Don't. Too late." The hand came up with a folding knife, small, cheap, sharp enough for intimidation. The man didn't even open it fully. He didn't need to. The point was the threat. The shaved-head thug reached for the woman's coat, grabbed a fistful of fabric, yanked her off balance. Her heel slipped on the wet step. She fell hard, one knee cracking against brick, a small sound of pain escaping her throat like it embarrassed her. That was the moment the scene changed. Not because Ethan got angry, because Ethan's mind labeled it correctly. Assault. He moved. So did Rex. Ethan closed the distance in a blur that looked like panic to the untrained eye. But it wasn't panic. It was precision. He hit the knife hand first, 2 fingers snapping into the wrist, turning the joint in a way the body can't argue with. The knife clattered onto the concrete. Before the man could cry out, Ethan's shoulder drove into his chest, pinning him against the doorway. Ethan's forearm slid under the man's chin, not choking, just controlling, while his heel hooked behind the man's ankle. A simple shift. The thug collapsed like his bones, had remembered gravity. The shaved-head thug cursed and swung, wide, sloppy, angry. Ethan didn't block. He stepped inside the arc and drove a short elbow into ribs. Not dramatic, not cinematic, effective. The thug folded, lungs emptying in a harsh wheeze. And the third man by the van, already halfway to running, made the worst decision possible. He bolted. Rex launched, silent, fast, a dark missile of muscle and discipline. He didn't bite, not yet. He struck the runner between the shoulders, all weight and momentum, slamming him face first onto wet pavement. Rex's front paws pinned the man's shoulder blades with calm inevitability. Only then did Rex growl. It wasn't a sound meant to scare. It was a sound meant to inform. The man froze. Ethan stood in the doorway over the first 2, breathing steady, eyes cold. "Get up," Ethan said to the shaved-head thug. The thug tried, failed, coughed. Pain turned his confidence into something raw. Ethan leaned in just enough for the man to hear him over the rain. "You touch her again," Ethan said softly, "and you'll wish you hadn't gotten up." The shaved-head thug spat onto the sidewalk, like that meant something. Then his gaze flicked to Rex, pinning the third man like he weighed nothing. The thug's face changed. He'd expected a fight. He hadn't expected to be dismantled. He dragged his companion to his feet, both of them staggering, both of them suddenly desperate to be anywhere else. "Crazy vet," he muttered as he backed away. Ethan didn't correct him, because it was easier when people underestimated what you'd survived. The 2 thugs half ran toward the van. The driver threw the cigarette, shoved the door open, and climbed in. But before they could slam it shut, the woman's voice cut through, clearer now, sharper. "You tell Mr. Drayton," she said, "that I remember what he did in '09. I remember all of it." The shaved-head thug hesitated. Something flickered behind his eyes. Then he jumped inside, and the van peeled away, tires spraying water. Rex returned to Ethan's heel at once, calm as a statue. The street was quiet again. The woman pushed herself up slowly, wincing. Ethan crouched beside her. "Are you hurt?" She looked him over as if measuring the truth in him. "My name is Marjorie Hale," she said. "And you have the walk of someone who knows where exits are." Ethan offered his hand. "Ethan." She took it, grip surprisingly strong. "Thank you, Ethan." He nodded once. "You should go inside. It's not safe out here." Marjorie's mouth tightened. "It hasn't been safe for a while." Inside Harbor House, the air smelled like canned soup and old paper. The walls were lined with shelves, neatly organized. A volunteer in the back, young, tired, wearing a hoodie that said UW Tacoma, peeked around the corner with wide eyes. "Ms. Hale?" the volunteer whispered. "Oh my God, are you okay?" Marjorie waved him off like she refused to become a scene. "I'm fine," she said. "Call the others, lock the door, and make coffee for our guest." Ethan didn't stay long. He gave the volunteer a quiet look that said, "Watch the street," and guided Rex back outside. But as he turned to leave, Marjorie's voice stopped him again. "Mr. Cole," she said. He paused. He didn't like the way she said his name, like she'd filed it away. "I don't know who you are," she continued, "but those men weren't thieves." Ethan didn't pretend otherwise. "No. They're with a company called Drayton Urban Renewal," she said, as if the words tasted bitter. "He's been buying up this block. He wants the pantry gone. He wants the building, and what it represents." Ethan glanced at the street. Why? Marjorie's eyes sharpened. Because it feeds people he doesn't want to see. Ethan felt something old stir behind his ribs. Not anger. A memory of being hungry in a world that didn't care. Marjorie watched his face carefully. He'll come back. Ethan nodded once. Then stay inside. Don't open the door for anyone. Marjorie smiled without warmth. I'm not the one who needs protecting. Ethan left, but he didn't go far, because Rex, walking beside him, calm as always, kept glancing back at Harbor House, as if the dog had already decided something Ethan hadn't admitted yet. That night, Tacoma's rain turned heavier, loud against the tin roof over Ethan's unit. He sat on the floor with his back against the wall, cleaning a small camping knife he barely used, because his hands needed something to do. Rex lay across his boots, warm and solid, a silent anchor. At 2:13 a.m., Rex's head snapped up. Ethan didn't move immediately. He listened, nothing obvious. But Rex's ears stayed fixed on the window. And then Rex stood, body rigid, tail still. Ethan got up and moved to the window. 2 blocks down, near Harbor House, headlights swept across the street and cut off. Then another vehicle, then another. Too quiet, too coordinated. Ethan didn't put on his jacket slowly. He didn't grab a phone. He didn't call anyone. He just clipped a light leash on Rex, not because Rex needed it, but because the world understood it, and slipped into the wet darkness. He approached Harbor House from the alley. That's when he smelled smoke, not the soft smell of a fireplace. Sharp, chemical, fresh. Ethan's stomach tightened. He moved faster. He rounded the corner and saw the truth. Men. 6 of them this time. Faces obscured by hoods, gloves, tools. They weren't here to scare an old woman anymore. They were here to erase her. One man held a crowbar at the door. Another carried a canister that looked like gasoline, but probably wasn't. Something cheaper, nastier. 2 others were already smashing the windows with bats, glass exploding inward like ice. Ethan counted. Rex watched. The men didn't notice Ethan until one of them swung his bat and saw Rex's eyes in the streetlight. He froze. "Dog!" he hissed. Then chaos cracked open. Ethan moved like a shadow, not loud, not brave, just inevitable. He hit the crowbar man first, driving him into the wall hard enough to make the air leave his lungs. Rex shot past Ethan and intercepted the man with the canister. This time, Rex didn't tackle. Rex bit. A controlled clamp onto the forearm, the kind of bite that ended decisions. The man screamed, dropping the canister. Liquid splashed onto the ground, stinking of solvents. Ethan's mind went colder. Accelerant. The other men surged forward. One pulled a pistol, cheap, black, shaking in his hand. Ethan saw it and didn't hesitate. He threw his weight sideways, knocking the gunman's arm up as the shot cracked into the night, shattering a streetlight. Glass rained down like sharp glitter. The alley flashed bright for half a second. And in that flash, Ethan saw something that made his blood run colder than rain. Marjorie's silhouette in the window. She'd woken up. She'd heard. She was watching. The gunman fought to bring the pistol down again. Ethan didn't allow it. He drove a knee into the man's thigh, took his balance, twisted the wrist, and stripped the pistol away. Ethan didn't fire. He didn't need to. He slammed the gun into the brick wall until it broke. Then he shoved the gunman away like he wasn't worth keeping close. The remaining men lost their nerve. It wasn't heroic. It was human. Predators don't like prey that bites back. They ran. Rex released his bite on command, one sharp whistle from Ethan, and the man with the injured arm stumbled after them, clutching himself, bleeding into the rain. The street went still again. But Ethan's heart was pounding now. Not from the fight, from the smell. Because the liquid on the ground wasn't just a threat. It was a message that could have become a fire. Marjorie pushed the door open from inside, just a crack, eyes wide, breath short. "You," she whispered. Ethan stepped closer but kept his voice calm. "Lock it," he said. "Now." She hesitated, staring at him like she was seeing something she'd been trying not to believe. Then she obeyed. The dead streetlight buzzed. Rain hissed on shattered glass. Somewhere in the distance, sirens started too late. Ethan looked down at Rex. Rex's muzzle was wet, not with rain, with blood. Rex stared up at Ethan, waiting. Ethan's hand touched Rex's neck, steadying both of them. "That was escalation," Ethan murmured, "which means we just got pulled into something bigger." Rex blinked once, no argument, because Rex had already chosen. The next morning, Harbor House looked like a crime scene even before the police arrived. Shattered windows, splintered door frame. The sidewalk slick with chemicals, washed thin by rain but not erased. A patrol car finally rolled up, slow, indifferent. 2 officers stepped out like they expected. Paperwork, not consequences. Marjorie stood at the steps with a blanket around her shoulders, posture rigid, face pale but furious. Ethan stayed in the background with Rex. He didn't like attention. He didn't like uniforms that didn't know what urgency looked like. One officer asked questions with bored eyes. "You sure it was Drayton's people?" Marjorie's stare could have cracked steel. "I'm sure because they've been threatening me for 8 months. The officer shrugged. "We'll file it." Ethan watched the shrug and felt something sour rise in his throat. Filing doesn't protect people, it just organizes the aftermath. That afternoon, a woman arrived in a black SUV that looked too expensive for the block. Not flashy, just confident. She walked up the steps with an umbrella that didn't match her eyes. Her name was Lila Hart. She introduced herself with a smile that didn't reach her gaze. "I work for Drayton Urban Renewal," she said, looking at Marjorie like she was a stubborn document. "Mr. Drayton heard about the unfortunate incident. He's very concerned." Marjorie laughed once, dry, sharp. Concerned that his men didn't finish the job. Lila didn't flinch. She opened a portfolio and pulled out papers. "This is a relocation offer," she said. "We'll cover moving expenses. We'll find you a beautiful place, quiet, safer." Marjorie didn't touch the papers. Ethan watched from the sidewalk, Rex seated at his heel like a statue. Lila's gaze slid to Rex, then to Ethan. "And you are?" she asked. Ethan didn't answer immediately. Lila smiled, still polite. "A friend? A volunteer?" Ethan's eyes stayed flat. "Someone who saw what happened." Lila's smile tightened by a fraction. "I'm glad you're here," she said softly, as if sharing a secret. "Because misunderstandings can turn dangerous. And accidents." She let the word hang. Ethan heard the threat underneath the silk. Marjorie heard it too. Marjorie leaned forward, eyes locked on Lila. "Tell your boss, I'm not leaving." Lila closed the portfolio with a quiet snap. "Then I hope you understand what refusing looks like." She turned to leave, but as she stepped down, Rex stood. No growl, no bark. Just a controlled rise to full height, head level, eyes steady. Lila's feet paused for half a heartbeat, her body reacting before her pride could pretend it didn't. Then she walked away faster. When the SUV disappeared, Marjorie exhaled slowly. Ethan approached, voice low. "Who is Drayton?" Marjorie's face hardened. "Caleb Drayton. He used to run logistics for the port. Then he consulted his way into real estate. Then he started buying politicians." She looked at the street, at the cracked sidewalks, at the buildings holding together through stubbornness. "He calls it revitalization," she said. "But he means eviction." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Why you?" Marjorie's gaze sharpened again. "Because Harbor House sits on the corner of a parcel he needs," she said. "And because I have something he doesn't want made public." Ethan watched her carefully. "What is it?" Marjorie hesitated, then she shook her head. "Not here." The air changed in that moment, not because of new information, but because Ethan felt it, the hidden weight behind her eyes. She wasn't just refusing money, she was guarding a truth. And men like Drayton didn't send thugs for a building. They sent thugs for what was buried inside it. That evening, Ethan returned with plywood and screws he bought from a hardware store across town. He didn't announce it, he just showed up. Marjorie opened the door without asking questions this time. Inside, volunteers were cleaning glass. A few teens from the neighborhood stood awkwardly, trying to look tough while their eyes kept flicking to Rex. A boy with a shaved fade and a hoodie too thin for winter stepped forward. "You the guy from last night?" he asked Ethan, chin lifted like a challenge. Ethan studied him. "You live around here?" "Name's Jace," the boy said. "My mom gets food here. Drayton's people been pushing. Nobody does anything." His voice cracked on the last part, and he hated himself for it. Ethan nodded once, as if accepting a report. "Help me board the windows," Ethan said. Jace blinked. "What?" Ethan handed him a drill. "You want to do something? Do something." Jace stared at the drill like it was a weapon he wasn't sure he deserved. Then he took it. And that's how it started, not with speeches, with screws biting into wood. Rex stayed near the door, silent, scanning. Kids approached him slowly, like they were approaching a myth. Rex allowed them close, but only on his terms. Calm, steady, warm. The next day more people came. Not because police called them, because the block talked. A baker from 3 streets over brought trays of sandwiches. A mechanic rolled up with a van full of scrap metal and offered to reinforce the back gate. An older woman brought coffee and blankets, like she'd been doing it her whole life. Drayton had tried to isolate Harbor House. Instead, he had lit a flare, but men like Drayton didn't accept embarrassment. On the 4th night, the power went out. Not the whole neighborhood, just Harbor House. The streetlights stayed on. The laundromat sign across the street still buzzed. Only the pantry went dark. Ethan was inside when it happened. He felt the sudden quiet of humming refrigerators dying. Rex's head snapped up. Ethan didn't reach for his phone. He reached for the back door. Because darkness like that isn't coincidence. It's permission. They moved through the building quietly. Ethan guiding with minimal gestures. Rex drifting ahead like a shadow with teeth. In the rear hallway, near the storage room, Ethan heard it. A soft scrape. Metal against brick. Someone was at the back wall. Ethan's eyes narrowed. He hadn't noticed the back wall much before. Just shelves, old paint, a smell of cardboard. But now he saw the outline. A door that wasn't really a door. A seam hidden behind stacked boxes. Marjorie's hidden weight suddenly made sense. Ethan motioned for Rex to hold. Rex froze, low and ready. Ethan eased closer, listening. A voice whispered outside, muffled by brick. "Cut it, faster." Tools again, not bats this time, precision. Ethan took a slow breath. He didn't know what was behind that hidden door yet, but he knew one thing. Drayton didn't want the pantry for the pantry. He wanted whatever was sealed inside that wall. Ethan backed away, moved through the building, and found Marjorie in her small office, candle lit, eyes fierce. "Someone's at the back wall," Ethan said. Marjorie's face drained of color, then her jaw locked. "Then it's time," she whispered. Ethan studied her. "Time for what?" Marjorie reached under her desk and pulled out a key on a chain, old and worn. She held it like it weighed a lifetime. "I swore I'd never open it again," she said. "But he's forcing it." Ethan's voice stayed calm. "Open what?" Marjorie stood, shoulders squaring. "That door," she said, and the truth behind it. Outside, the scrape grew louder. Rex's growl started. Low, controlled, vibrating the floor. Marjorie walked past Ethan toward the hidden seam in the back hall, candle trembling in her hand, but not her spine. Ethan followed, every sense sharp. She moved boxes aside with surprising strength. The seam revealed a rusted metal door. She slid the key into the lock. Her hand paused. And for the first time, Ethan saw fear in her eyes. Not for herself, but for what opening the door would unleash. The lock clicked. The door creaked inward, and behind it, the pantry's pass breathed out cold air, smelling like dust, old paper, and something sharper, oil and metal. Inside the hidden room were filing cabinets. Not food, not supplies, files, boxes, hard drives wrapped in plastic. Evidence. Ethan looked at Marjorie. "What is this?" Marjorie's voice went thin. "Caleb Drayton's crimes." She reached into a box and pulled out a folder. Inside were photocopies of contracts, names, signatures, and photos. Grainy images of meetings in parking lots, briefcases exchanging hands. "I worked at the port," she said. "Back when he was just logistics. I saw the first bribes, the first stolen shipments, the first shipments that weren't just illegal, but deadly." Ethan's stomach tightened. "Deadly how?" Marjorie swallowed. "Chemicals, waste, things that were supposed to be contained. He dumped them near neighborhoods no one cared about." Her eyes glistened, but her voice stayed hard. "My husband tried to report it. He died 2 weeks later. Heart attack." Ethan felt the room tilt. Not with shock. He'd seen evil dressed in paperwork before, but with the clarity of why thugs had shown up. Marjorie looked straight at Ethan. "I've been holding this for 16 years, she said, waiting for the right moment, waiting for someone who wouldn't just file it. Outside, the scrape at the wall stopped. Silence. Then a new sound. A boot against metal. A test. They'd found the seam. Ethan's mind snapped back into the present. "How many?" he asked. Marjorie's whisper shook. "I don't know." Ethan listened. 2 sets of footsteps. Maybe 3. Ethan motioned Marjorie back into the hidden room. "Stay in there," he said. "Whatever happens, don't come out until I tell you." Marjorie started to protest. Ethan's eyes cut to hers. Not cruel, just absolute. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "this part is mine." Rex stepped forward, body low, ears forward. Ethan whispered one word to him. "Guard." Rex moved into position by the hall, silent and ready. The back door shuddered. A crowbar punched into the seam. Metal groaned. Then the door burst inward and 3 men spilled into the hall, flashlights sweeping. Not teenagers with bats, professionals. One carried a handgun, one carried bolt cutters, one carried a radio. They froze when they saw Ethan, standing in the candle glow like he'd been waiting. The gunman lifted the pistol. "Move!" he snapped. "We don't want you." Ethan didn't move. "You're in the wrong building," Ethan said. The gunman's finger tightened. Rex growled, deeper now, a warning that made the air feel heavy. The man with the radio spoke quickly into it, voice tense. "We got a problem. He's here. The dog, too." A voice crackled back, smooth, irritated. "Then end it." Ethan's eyes narrowed. That voice wasn't a thug's. It was a man used to giving orders from behind glass. Caleb Drayton. The gunman fired. Ethan moved at the exact moment, stepping sideways, grabbing the pantry shelf, shoving it hard. Cans exploded off metal, clattering like gunfire. The bullet punched into the shelf where Ethan's head had been. Rex launched. This time, Rex didn't hesitate. He slammed into the gunman's arm, jaws clamping just above the wrist. The pistol flew, skidding across the floor. The gunman screamed and went down. Ethan closed on the man with the bolt cutters, driving him into the wall, stripping the tool away, and pinning him with a forearm across the chest. The radio man turned to run. Ethan didn't chase, because Rex already had. Rex released the gunman on Ethan's whistle and intercepted the runner with a tackle that shook dust from the ceiling. The fight lasted seconds, and then the building was quiet again, except for heavy breathing and the distant hum of streetlights that still had power. Ethan stood over the gunman, who was clutching his arm, face wet with panic. "Who sent you?" Ethan asked. The man spat blood. "You don't know what you stepped into." Ethan's voice stayed calm. "I do. You were sent to destroy evidence." The gunman's eyes flicked, just once, toward the hidden seam behind the boxes. Ethan saw it. That was answer enough. Sirens started again in the distance, still too far. Ethan looked at Rex, who stood panting lightly, eyes locked on the intruders with controlled fury. Ethan knew what came next. If Drayton's men were here tonight, Drayton himself wasn't far behind. And if Marjorie's files were real, then Harbor House wasn't just a pantry. It was a trigger. Ethan turned toward the hidden room. "Ma'am," he called softly. Marjorie emerged, candle in hand, face pale but determined. Ethan looked at the cabinets, the hard drives, the boxes. "This doesn't stay here," he said. Marjorie nodded. "No." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then we move it," he said. "Tonight. Because the final phase of every story like this is always the same. When a powerful man realizes he can't buy your silence, he tries to bury you with it. And Ethan Cole, who had spent years being used as a weapon, had no intention of letting another good person become collateral. Not while Rex was watching. Not while the rain still fell. Quietly, relentlessly, like the city itself was holding its breath for what happened next.